Welcome to the Deep Dive, where
Yeah.
we plunge into the depths of knowledge. Today we're exploring the remarkable and sometimes, well, controversial figure of Nirmal Kumar Bose.
A really pivotal force in Indian anthropology.
Exactly. A scholar deeply influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, observing Indian society with um, a very keen and often surprising eye. His work was groundbreaking, but also, yeah, fiercely debated, challenged a lot of existing notions.
Definitely did.
So, our mission today is to unpack Bose's significant contributions, particularly to understanding Indian tribes and the, incredibly complex caste system,
We'll look at his intellectual journey, some of those really startling findings.
and then get into the intense debates that followed his theories. So, yeah, prepare yourself for a journey that will probably make you think a bit differently.
And it's not just about the facts, is it? It's really about understanding how these diverse perspectives shape what we think we know. Bose's work, well, it undeniably challenged the status quo. It prompted a lot of critical thinking about identity, culture, power, especially in the Indian context. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how the same story can be seen so differently by different people.
Absolutely. And where better to start than with Bose's early work? His studies on tribes, they often stirred controversy, didn't they? Particularly because of the intimate details he revealed.
That's right.
Let's begin with his monograph on the Baiga tribe of Chhattisgarh, the Baigas. Bose really focused heavily on their sexual lives, their marriage practices.
Which predictably perhaps led to accusations. People said he was presenting an erotic picture of Indian tribes. Yeah, he was criticized for, portraying tribals as maybe backward or immoral, especially around sexuality. This often echoed the views of missionaries who, let's say, preferred a more civilized lens.
That's a crucial point. Bose noted things like celibacy being never heard of among the Baigas, and that children were taught about sexes from a young age. Can you imagine the reaction to that back then?
Quite something.
He even reported, and this is quite specific, that Baiga men could identify and rank 12 different types of breasts by attractiveness. Now, this level of intimate observation, well, yeah, deeply controversial.
Very.
It highlights his audacious approach to fieldwork. He was really pushing boundaries, wasn't he? Delving into details many considered way too private. It forces you to rethink what data even means in ethnography.
It certainly does. It's a clear example of how he tried to understand communities from the inside out, often at, considerable personal and professional risk.
So how did he get that kind of access, that really intimate information? It's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
To get access unavailable to outsiders, he actually married a tribal girl, Kosi her name was, from the Raj Gond tribe. He did this while conducting his studies.
Yes, a very direct, if unconventional method to immerse himself fully, a way to bypass the usual barriers.
Okay, so moving from the Baigas, Bose then turned his anthropological lens to another fascinating and yet equally controversial institution, the Muria's youth dormitories.
The go-to.
Ah, yes, the go-to. These were kind of like ancient gurukuls, places where children from maybe 5 to 7 years old were admitted for basic education, often compulsory.
And some dormitories were unisexual, but the Ghotuls specifically were co-residential. Boys and girls lived together.
Right.
And the Ghotul served as this really crucial platform. It introduced children to their society's socio-cultural, economic values, fostered cultural awareness, helped integrate them. It was like a whole social education center.
But here's where the controversy kicks in again.
Yeah.
Bose also reported on, well, sexual training and exploration within the Ghotul.
Yes.
Boys and girls were apparently trained by seniors from a young age and were permitted to engage in sexual affairs with each other. He even used that striking phrase, dance of genitalia, to describe these intense relations.
They did. And he observed that boys and girls were often, quote, not virgin at all at the time of marriage, except, and this is a key phrase, relatively virgin to each other. Meaning they might have had multiple partners within the dormitory setting, but not necessarily with the person they were eventually going to marry.
Wow.
It might sound quite, unconventional to many people, but Bose's study really shattered a lot of the prevailing assumptions about tribal lifestyles. It presented a much more complex reality than people imagine.
That's truly eye-opening. Now let's look at his first tribal friend and informant, this figure Panda Baba.
Yep.
A magician from the Raj Gond tribe, featured in Bose's Leaves from the Jungle.
Right, Panda Baba.
And apparently it was Panda Baba who advised Bose to marry within the community to get that deeper access, information often hidden from outsiders.
That's the story, yes. A key piece of advice that shaped his methodology, it seems.
Bose also highlighted the Remarkably simple divorce practice among the Raj Gonds. If a couple wanted to split,
Very straightforward.
they'd go to the elders, break a pot, snap the straw in two, and that was it. Separate 'em.
Simple, symbolic, and effective.
Bose observed that marriage here seemed more like a contract than the kind of sacred relationship often seen in Hinduism. It lacked permanency, allowed for multiple remarriages. Does this offer a profound contrast to, well, many traditional notions of marriage we might hold?
It absolutely does. It presents a very different perspective on marital bonds. And interestingly, Bose strongly felt the need to preserve these practices, protect them from external contact, because he feared they'd disappear as society changed.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit now to Bose's study on the Sara tribe. They're found in Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. He looked specifically at their religion.
Yes, and his aim here was quite ambitious. He wanted to portray tribal religions as genuinely complex, putting them at par with Hindu religion, really challenging any idea that they were somehow backward or inferior.
How did he show that complexity?
Well, he detailed how shamanism was their primary mode of worship. Shamans dealt with guiding spirits, these tutelaries, who sort of carried demands between the human world, the inner world, and the world of spirits and ghosts. And the Saras believed in many, many gods. Bose actually documented 174 different deities, and these varied from village to village. This highlighted a complexity similar to Hindu concepts like Kuldevi or Kuldavada, the local or clan deities.
174, wow.
And for them, every ancestor was believed to have reached a godlike status.
How incredibly detailed.
Yeah.
Bose also showed how deeply religion was woven into just everyday Sora life. Any disease, for example.
Right. Any illness was believed to be caused by supernatural forces. And the cure, always through religious sacrifice.
He gave specific examples, didn't he? Like,
Yeah, a fowl for a headache, a goat for a stuffed nose, even a whole pig if you had a fever.
so it wasn't just belief, it was practice.
Exactly. This demonstrates how religion wasn't some separate thing for them. It was integral, practical. It explained and influenced every part of their daily life, from health to social harmony.
And this extended deep into their economy, too, right? Ancestor worship required expensive offerings, buffaloes, good wine.
Yes, very expensive. And Sora men would work very hard, extremely hard, to earn the money for these offerings, even if they themselves lived very simply, maybe consuming low-quality wine themselves.
But offering the imported stuff, so to speak, to their ancestors.
Precisely. Their intense labor was motivated primarily by worshiping the ancestor, not really for personal gain.
Bose highlighted the sheer burden these rituals could become. Feasts for ancestor worship could be as grand as weddings, apparently. Rich sweets, dizagi mitai.
Oh, yes. So grand that a household might be completely cut off from active life for a whole week just preparing and hosting. And it absolutely served as a kind of status show-off.
But there was a darker side, too.
There was. And here's where it gets quite stark. The burden, the social pressure could be so high that individuals might actually commit suicide if they felt they couldn't fulfill the obligation to organize these offerings. Bose documented several such cases. It's a profound illustration of the immense, sometimes crushing power of cultural and religious values, where life itself could be sacrificed for these perceived obligations.
A really stark realization. So by highlighting all this complexity, the good and the bad, Bose convincingly argued that Sora religion was just as intricate as Hinduism, disproving any simplistic, dismissive portrayal.
That was his key point there, yes.
So we've seen how Nirmal Kumar Bose meticulously observed the private lives, the religious practices of tribes, often sparking quite a bit of controversy. Now, let's maybe explore his broader intellectual journey, the theories he developed from all this.
Okay. Well, Bose was among the first generation of anthropologists from the University of Calcutta. Its anthropology department was established back in 1920.
And his background wasn't just academic, was it?
Not at all. It's really important to note his deep involvement in India's independence movement. He was part of non-cooperation, civil disobedience, quit India. He even served as Mahatma Gandhi's private secretary for a time in Noakhali, 1946-47.
Wow, Gandhi's private secretary.
Yes. And this direct connection, it really ignited his interest in things like untouchability and caste-related affairs. It pushed him to study caste not just socially, but as a complex anthropological entity.
And he held significant positions later on.
He did. He became director of the Anthropological Survey of India, a major role from 59 to 64, and then commissioner of the NCSCST, the National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes, from 67 to 69. Quite influential institutionally.
So in terms of his intellectual influences, what shaped his thinking? You mentioned Indology.
Yes, Indology was a major one. Bose believed that traditional Hindu textual categories, things like Kriya for action, Samhati for social organization, Tattva for knowledge or belief, and Vastu for material objects, he thought these could offer a powerful framework, a way to understand and classify the huge diversity of Indian culture.
Like using ancient blueprints to map a modern structure.
That's a good way to put it. Another significant influence was diffusionism, the idea of how culture spreads. He was shaped by people like Kroeber and Whistler, their concepts of culture area and age area.
How did he apply that?
He studied, for example, the diffusion of spring festival culture complexes across India. Gangar in Rajasthan, Holi in North India, Gudi Parva, Ugadi, Baisakhi Bihu, Chak Charkut. All these different festivals sharing core elements. Isn't it fascinating how elements of the same festival or even architectural styles could spread across a whole subcontinent, like a river reaching different regions?
It really highlights that underlying cultural connection beneath the diversity.
Exactly. He did the same with temple architecture, pointing to the distinct Nagara and Dravidian styles and that blended Vizara style in central India as evidence of this cultural exchange and adaptation over time.
And a third key influence was functionalism, from Malinowski and Brown.
Yes, functionalism. Bose defined culture as fundamentally an adaptive device, something shaped by the needs and aspirations of the people. He even called it the soul of culture, or the guiding light.
Interesting.
But what's really interesting is that Bose rejected Kroeber's idea of culture being super-organic.
Meaning culture controls us.
Right, the idea that culture is this force above and beyond individuals. Bose disagreed. He argued that creative, deviant individuals, and he saw Gandhi as a prime example, could actually be the starting point of change, especially at critical moments in history.
That idea is incredibly powerful.
It is. It reminds us how deeply a single individual can influence society, no matter how large or complex that society seems.
That recognition of individual agency, yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's dive into Nirmal Kumar Bose's most famous and probably most debated theory, the Hindu mode of tribal absorption.
Ah, yes. This is central to his work. Bose outright rejected the myth of divine origin for the caste system. He also rejected the notion of purity and pollution that so often defined it.
So what was his explanation for why it persisted?
He proposed it persisted primarily because of the economic and cultural security it provided. He defined caste as a non-competitive, hereditary, vocation-based productive organization. Something operating within village communities, guided, he thought, by a general principle of interethnic tolerance.
So, if I understand correctly, everyone had a defined job by birth. That minimized competition, ensured some economic security. Is that the idea?
That was the theory, yes. It minimized direct competition for specific roles. And Bose believed this system could only really flourish where there was enough space, adequate ecological and demographic space to set up new villages if needed.
And he predicted its decline with urbanization.
He did. He thought urbanization would lead to the disintegration of caste. His reasoning was that job scarcity in cities would break that traditional monopolization of a job by a community. Competition would inevitably increase.
Okay, so that's his view on caste itself. How does the Hindu mode of tribal absorption fit in?
Well, the core idea here was that tribes were systematically absorbed into the fold of Hinduism, and in this process, they were given a lower caste identity. He saw this absorption not as accidental, but as a conscious, well-organized practice.
And the benefit for the tribes, in Bose's view.
The key benefit, as he saw it, was receiving a monopoly over a particular occupation within a specific region. This, in turn, ensured their economic security. And this economic security, he argued, was why they often accepted a low position in the hierarchy without major revolt. Bose emphasized that while Hindus, particularly Brahmins leading this process, hardly left any economic freedom for these absorbed tribes, they generally left intact the original social and religious cultures of tribes. They only modified aspects that really went against their own ideas, like, for instance, cow sacrifice. And he argued this dynamic actually explained the incredible diversity of Hinduism, because it wasn't about total assimilation, but integration with modification. New narratives, new stories were even created to establish a linkage, connect the tribe to Hinduism, giving them a new Hinduized identity.
Are you seeing how a community, while trying to keep its identity, also becomes part of a larger society? It's a complex dance. Bose provided several case studies, right? Like the Huangs of Odisha.
Yes, the Huangs. Originally liquor manufacturers, they lost that livelihood due to British colonial forest policies.
So what happened?
This led to two main waves of Huang migration. Those who moved to Palahara started wheat cultivation and, interestingly, began claiming Kshatriya status.
The Triya.
While those who went to Denkanal took up oil milling and started claiming Vaishya status.
The different paths, different statuses claimed.
Exactly. And Bose observed them worshipping goddess Lakshmi, chanting Lakshmi verses. He saw this as clear evidence of their ongoing Hinduization.
Fascinating. What about the bills of Madhya Pradesh?
Another interesting case, there's a narrative suggesting goddess Parvati originally belonged to the Bills. The story goes that Nandi's sacrifice, given by Parvati for prosperity, somehow led to a curse of poverty, making them unable to farm their own land.
A curse.
Yes. And consequently, Parvati and Shiva supposedly allowed them theft as a kind of sinless economic livelihood, which is why some Bills apparently refer to themselves as whole Kachor thieves of Mahadev or Shiva. Another story claims some Bill groups descend from Eklavya, the famous archer from the Mahabharata.
How intriguing that a religious narrative could, in Bose's interpretation at least, justify the traditional livelihood of an entire community. Then there are the Bandas of Odisha.
The Bandas. Famous for covering only their lower body with a small cloth, the ringa. There's a popular belief linking them to the Ramayana.
What's the story?
The story is that Sita saw them and their behavior displeased her, so she cursed them to remain naked for eternity. This narrative, again, connects them directly to Hindu mythology.
And Yalama in South India.
Right. Yalama or Renuka, another absorption narrative. Renuka, seen as an incarnation of Parvati, supposedly lost her chastity and was beheaded by her son, Parashuram.
Grim story.
Very. Her head was then supposedly swapped with that of a tribal woman. This composite goddess, Yalama, became widely worshipped across South India under various names.
So the effect was?
The narrative, Bose suggested, effectively brought all tribal goddesses into the Hindu fold, classifying them as incarnations of Parvati Renuka. This greatly facilitated the absorption process, providing a theological framework.
Okay, so that was Nirmal Kumar Bose's influential Hindu mode of tribal absorption theory, how tribes were, in his view, assimilated into Hinduism. But like you said, no theory goes unchallenged in academia.
Absolutely not.
Bose's ideas, while very influential, faced significant criticism. Some saw them as perhaps romanticized pictures that maybe overlooked some of the harsher realities.
Precisely. It's useful to look at the criticisms leveled against Verrier Elwin. First, he was a contemporary of Bose, also working on tribal affairs because those critiques often reflect the broader debates of the time.
Okay, like what?
While scholars like K.M. Munshi argued Elwin overstated their distinctiveness and uniqueness, Munshi felt Elwin failed to see the wider linkage these tribal communities already had with mainstream Indian society.
Seeing them too much in isolation.
Kind of. And K.S. Singh, a very respected anthropologist and former IAS officer, criticized Elwin for portraying tribal life as perhaps too idyllic, harmonious, glossing over the conflict and challenges within these communities.
And this criticism wasn't just academic. It had real-world political implications.
Oh, definitely. Elwin's isolationist policy, particularly when he was a tribal advisor in Northeast India, or NIFA as it was known,
Right.
that policy was blamed by some for hindering tribal integration with modern India. They argued it contributed to underdevelopment and even fueled secessionist movements.
Wow.
During the 1962 Indochina War, some even argued Elwin's policy led to loss of territory. He famously opposed settling Punjabi refugees in Arunachal Pradesh. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, how deeply an academic idea can impact policy and real lives.
It really shows the weight of responsibility there. So, turning back to Bose specifically, his Hindu mode of tribal absorption theory also came under fire.
It did. Scholars like Apajit Guha argued Bose's theory suffered from weak methodological foundations and insufficient field data. Guha felt it was often based on relatively short field trips, not that deep, prolonged immersion.
And Guha went further, didn't he?
Yeah.
Accusing the theory of serving a certain ideology.
Yes, he argued it served the ideology of the privileged class and actually foreclosed the growth of an indigenous, nationalist, and secular Indian anthropology. Strong words.
Were there specific inconsistencies pointed out in Bose's own data by his critics?
Good question. Guha, for instance, highlighted parts of Bose's own Wong data that showed non-Hindu customs continuing, like cock sacrifice and even beef eating. He also noted that the Wangs were not considered by the Hindus to be one of the Hindu castes, despite the claimed absorption.
Interesting.
Plus, there was criticism that Bose hadn't rechecked his 12-year-old data, raising methodological flags, and that core idea that tribes gained a monopoly over an occupation through caste absorption, that was seriously questioned.
Why?
Because critics pointed out that most Hinduese tribals actually ended up as cultivators or landless laborers, roles where caste offered hardly any protection against competition at all. The economic security argument seemed weak in many cases.
Okay, so while Bose's ideas were gaining prominence, there was another significant scholar whose voice perhaps wasn't heard as loudly at the time, Tarak Chandra Das.
Ah, T.C. Das, yes. A contemporary of Bose, widely regarded by those who knew his work as an excellent field worker and ethnographer. But his contrarian ideas that challenged Bose's narrative, were largely marginalized for a long time.
What was his focus? How did it differ?
Das focused much more on the ground realities, on the actual sustenance of indigenous cultural identity. He even documented processes of de-Hinduization, tribes moving away from Hindu practices.
De-Hinduization. Interesting.
Yes, and he was a strong advocate for applied anthropology, using anthropological knowledge for practical nation building in areas like trade, industry, agriculture, education. He was critical of colonial schools for tribals, for instance.
And his approach to fieldwork was different, too.
Very much so. Das was known for his patient approach towards data and methodological rigor, a stark contrast to Bose, who, critics like Guha argued, was sometimes hasty and quick to search for generalizations, maybe using overly simplistic analogies.
And Das's actual ethnographies, his detailed studies, they painted a different picture. What do they show about communities like the Bhumij or the Korea?
They really did. His work on the Bhumij, for example, showed how they actively maintained their tribal ethnic identity despite significant Hindu influence. Some sections even set up strong barriers, social taboos, against Hindu culture. Associating with Dikus, their term for outsiders or Hindus, meant irredeemable pollution to them.
So active resistance, not just passive absorption.
Exactly. And the Korea, a hunter-gatherer tribe, he found they lived almost completely outside the influence of Hinduism. They practiced things like bride price, widow remarriage, ate non-vegetarian diets, worshipped non-Hindu deities, sacrificed fowl, all things that directly defied the neat absorption theory.
And how about the Ho tribe? Similar pattern, or more nuance there?
Among the Ho, Das found that while there was certainly some Hindu influence, they absolutely continued practices like divorce and widow remarriage, the Sangha form. They maintained many non-Hindu religious rites, and again, association with Hindus was often seen as causing pollution.
So it wasn't a one-way street.
Not at all. Even Surajit Sinsha, who was actually one of Bose's own students, later found these counter-processes among tribes. Sinha noted that tribals were not without an awareness that they were looked down upon and given a low status, even if they didn't always openly revolt. So yeah, the relationship between tribes and Hindus was far more complex, far more multifaceted than a simple absorption model might suggest.
Right. Okay, let's try and recap this. In today's deep dive, we really peeled back quite a few layers of Nirmal Kumar Bose's, well, monumental work.
We have.
We saw how his tribal studies, things like the Baigas, the Murias, Ghotul, they stirred significant controversy, but also gave us these unprecedented glimpses into the private lives of these communities. Even his marriage was a method, wasn't it, to try and understand tribal life from the inside.
We also learned how he presented Sara religion as being just as complex as Hinduism. We looked at their intricate rituals, like sacrifices for diseases, and that surprising link between their religion and their economy. And then we traced his key intellectual influences, Indology, diffusionism, functionalism, that sort of built his theoretical toolkit.
Then we really dove into his most significant and, debated theory, the Hindu mode of tribal absorption. We explored his idea of how tribes were assimilated into Hindu society, supposedly in exchange for economic security. And we look at examples like the Pol, Wang, and Banda tribes, which he used to illustrate this process.
But crucially, we also saw how this theory faced some pretty severe criticism, especially from scholars like Abhijit Guha and T.C. Das, who presented a much more nuanced, sometimes contrasting picture, really emphasizing the resilience and complexity of tribal identities and their interactions with Hinduism.
Yeah.
It serves as such a vital reminder, doesn't it? That to truly understand history, to understand society, we absolutely must consider multiple perspectives, even when they conflict.
Definitely. Today, we've explored how, in the world of knowledge, an idea often has so many layers, and how crucial it is to view it from multiple angles to really grasp its depth. Doesn't it make you reflect on how simply we sometimes perceive the world around us,
Yeah.
when its underlying reality can be just so much more intricate and often surprising?
It absolutely does. Recognizing that complexity and actively seeking out diverse perspectives, even on topics we think we already understand. Well, that's key, isn't it? The pursuit of knowledge is truly an endless, fascinating journey.
Indeed. So with that thought, we'll conclude today's deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back for more surprising facts and engaging conversations in our next episode.